Welcome to Jyotish with Marc Boney. Marc is an internationally renowned teacher, author, and practitioner of the ancient astrological science of India. He is known for his engaging teaching and writing style and his ability to communicate the complex concepts of Jyotish in a clear, understandable way. Now, here is Marc Boney.
Hello everyone, and welcome again to my YouTube channel on Jyotish, the astrology of ancient India. And my presentation today continues a theme of yogas and dashas. These are the two most important concepts within the Vedic system. The one, yogas, refers to planetary combinations that show the potential for certain types of karma. And then the latter concept, dashas, means planetary periods which show when these karmic potentials can come to fruition. And to illustrate my points today, I'd just like to tell you a quick story about a time back in 2014 and when I was teaching in Russia. I believe it was Moscow. And in my usual style of teaching, I started out the class by just showing them the chart that I'm showing you now. And since these were mostly intermediate students of Jyotish, I asked them to zero in on Mercury in her chart. You can see that it's in the sign Libra in her 12th house. And I asked the students just to, give me some input about what they thought some of this period could bring for this woman. And, one person started out by pointing out that, the 12th house is referred to in Jyotish as a dushtana, or difficult house. And because of that, and also because for anyone with Scorpio Lagna, Mercury is said to be something of a functional malefic, then they indicated some rather unfavorable results for the period. And it went on like this with mostly unfavorable comments. But then I said, well, it may surprise you to know that this person actually got hugely famous, was hugely successful, and got enormously wealthy during this time, which came as something to a surprise to students in the class. And so I asked them to contemplate why that might have been. And someone pointed out that for somebody with Scorpio Lagna, Mercury is the 11th lord of gains. The 11th house in Jyotish is a money house. And I said, well, that's true, but here it falls in the 12th house of expenses, of losses. And someone then pointed out, well, Mercury is in the sign of a great friend, falling in the sign Libra, and therefore capable potentially of giving some good results. And again, I acknowledged this point, but pointed out that is that sufficient alone to bring great wealth, great fame? And so things went on like this, and pretty soon the class fell silent as no one really had any ideas as to why this Mercury Mahadasha, this Mercury major period, could have produced such a result. Of course, what I was wanting people to understand that here again, it's a simple case of yogas show what and dashas show when. Because I highlighted for them that what Mercury is involved here is in a very important, very significant planetary combination referred to in Jyotish as Chandra Adi Yoga. Again, I'll say that, Chandra Adi Yoga. Chandra is the Sanskrit word for the moon, and Adi means first. So it's a planetary combination involving the moon that can make you first among your peers. It's a combination given in the ancient texts that can bring both great stature in life and also great fortune under the right circumstances. And let me adjust the chart here because I want you to see that the definition of this yoga, it happens based on the position of the moon. So what I've done here is I've changed the chart to reflect the moon as being like in the first house or the Lagna. And the yoga is defined by when all three natural benefics, which would be Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus, fall in the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th house from the moon, which, if you think about what I just said and you look at this chart, you'll see that it's true here. Using the position of the moon in Pisces as the first house, well, then the natural benefic Venus falls in the 6th house. The natural benefic Jupiter falls in the 7th house, and the natural benefic Mercury falls in the 8th house from there. So this is what's known as Chandra Adi Yoga. Now, like any yoga, it's going to give its results in a great magnitude or a lesser degree, in an unblemished way or a blemished way, based on other factors about it and based on different associations to it. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about what makes this Chandra Adi Yoga a particularly good one, effective one that did give a lot of its fruit. And the first thing I want to point out about that is that the moon always acts more benefically. It becomes more of a benign factor in any chart when it's very full, and actually, when it's waxing. And this is exactly what we see in this chart. You can always tell how full the moon is just by looking at a chart and seeing how many houses, how many signs it falls away from the sun. When the moon's directly across from the position of the sun, then that indicates a period of the full moon. In this case, it's in the sign just before, which means that the moon is waxing, that is, it's becoming brighter, and it's moving towards fullness. So in this case, a Chandra Adi Yoga involving a moon that's waxing and full becomes a more powerful, becomes a more effective Chandra Adi Yoga. And then the next thing we want to see is what's called strength of planets. The participating planets, do they have any source of strength in the chart? And here, in order to be able to see this, you have to understand something a little bit more subtle here in the picture that we have. First of all, if we come to Venus, the planet falling in the 6th house from Chandra Adi Yoga, it falls in the sign Leo. But if you look closely, you see that the planet who rules Leo is in Venus's sign Libra. This is what's known as a Parivartana Yoga, or an exchange between house lords. Venus is in the sun's sign. The sun is in Venus's sign. This is called an exchange of signs. And as I teach my students, it actually becomes a great source of strength for both planets. They can now give their results almost as if they were in their own sign, and therefore, quite strongly. And now in the case of Mercury here, we already mentioned that it has a pretty good dignity by itself, meaning it is in the sign of a great friend, which is the third best condition, the third best dignity of a planet. But it's also been my observation that any planet that's with another planet that's involved in an exchange, this also becomes something of a strength, a source of strength for it. So this is what we see here. And then, of course, many of you may be aware that in Jyotish, we don't just use a birth chart. We also use these things called Vargas, or divisional charts. They're an arithmetic derivation of the birth chart. And one in particular, called the Navamsha, or the ninth division, is incredibly important to use and to evaluate for a lot of different reasons. But one of the main reasons is that for seeing what's called the underlying strength of planets. So I'm going to shift our picture here to see this Navamsha of this woman's. And what we're looking for is the particular planets that are involved in this Chandra Adi Yoga. First, the moon here. And we actually don't see it in any special condition, but then if we look at Venus, we'll notice that in this divisional chart, Venus is again involved in an exchange, just like it was in the birth chart. You'll see that it goes into Mars's sign Scorpio here, while at the same time Mars goes into Venus's sign Libra. Again, this produces this Parivartana Yoga, this exchange of signs, which increases the kind of results they can give as a result of this. And then lastly, when we look at Jupiter here, we see it in the sign Aquarius, which there are some references in the ancient text that my Jyotish guru, K.N. Rao, used to always quote, that Jupiter in Aquarius can give its results quite powerfully, almost as if it's like an exalted planet. So going back to the birth chart here, my point about this is that what makes this Chandra Adi Yoga a particularly effective one and able to give its results strongly are additional factors. I could show you Chandra Adi Yogas that have the same sort of pattern, meaning all the natural benefics will fall in the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th from there, that really didn't give the kind of results that this one did. All right, and the reasons, again, has to do with the strength of planets and also some of the conditions that they might have been in. But there's an additional reason here why this one's also giving particularly powerful results. There's another yoga involving the moon, a very well-known yoga that every first-year student of Jyotish hears about. It's called Gaja Kesari Yoga. Gaja means elephant, Kesari means lion, or the elephant-lion combination. And this is a yoga that under the right circumstance can make you a prominent person in society in the same way that an elephant in the jungle is the biggest beast of the jungle, and of course the lion is the king of beasts. They're prominent members of the jungle society, you might say. And so under the right conditions, as I mentioned, Gaja Kesari yoga can make a person a prominent individual. And this is what we see here as well. This yoga is defined by when Jupiter falls in an angular house from the moon. And in this case, if you use the moon as the first house, Jupiter here falls in the seventh from there, an angular house from there, giving this combination. So now we have the moon and Jupiter not only involved in this Chandra Adi yoga, but also in this Gaja Kesari yoga. And this added to the kind of effects that the planets involved could give. So now I'll reveal who this person is. This person is Kim Kardashian, someone who is in the US quite a major celebrity. She appears in a reality TV show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. To my mind, she's a perfect example of someone who becomes famous for being famous in our celebrity-obsessed culture. That's been her karma to be so, no question. And she, makes many, many millions out of her celebrity. So if we want to understand how that can be seen astrologically, really there's a lot of reasons for it in her chart, but I'm just highlighting one of the major ones, which is the presence of this Chandra Adi yoga, which when she was starting at the age of 17, she moved into one of the periods of a planet involved in this yoga. She moved into her 17-year Mercury period, just recently ended in 2015, at the age of 32, but you'll see that it was during this time that she became this well-known, famous celebrity person and making this huge fortune during this time. And then, if we look at certain sub-periods when that would happen even more strongly, I can remember showing this chart to a group of students of mine in San Diego when she was running her Mercury Rahu period, and indicating that the next sub-period, that is Mercury Jupiter, would really bring this out to a strong degree and might even indicate the height of her celebrity, the height of her fame. And it actually proved to be correct. And I made this prediction just based on two simple factors. The simple factor that major period of Mercury, sub-period of Jupiter, really activated this components of the Chandra Adi yoga in her chart, as well as the Gaja Kesari yoga. And so this was the basis upon which I said, which really wasn't for anyone who understood these classical principles of Jyotish. This would have been an evident sort of thing to see. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. Again, what I'm trying to do here is make the point that the essence of Jyotish is these yogas, these dashas, to the degree in which you can see these yogas in a chart, to the degree in which you can see that a particular major period activates yogas in a chart, is the degree in which you can then sort of accurately see some of the potentials that are available during this time period. So until we meet again, and I'll be talking about more Graha yogas, namaste.
Learn more at www.marcboney.com.